Through Adversity is sponsored by MVS Autos, keeping you on the road. MVS Autos offer a range of vehicle services including MOT, servicing, repairs, welding, diagnostics, aircon and much more. Based in Wormley, serving all of Bristol and surrounding areas. For 10% discount, quote TAP MVS when booking. Hello and welcome back to Through Adversity with me, Rich. And as usual, I'd like to thank our sponsor, MVS Autos, based in Wormley, Bristol. And still sitting with us, we've got Mr. Joe Loney, who's not been sat there for the past couple of weeks waiting to come on because the amount of stress we had logging on last time. It looks like I haven't changed. I have. We're sometime down the road.
To be fair, I did.
You made an effort, but you didn't remove the dildo from your back shelf in the bedroom, mate. That's still on the side. Say no names. The toys all over the bed.
I'm not telling you where it is.
Well, it's still fitted, apparently. That's why you sat weird. So we last left you. You were just, and those who are just picking up from part one, you'll know where we left Joe as he was clearing his garage out from an abusive relationship with his ex, and the police had turned up, and you basically had to get the hell out of there as rapidly as you could. So moving on from that, then, so let's kick ourselves off straight away. So, what was your next move after getting free from that horrible situation you get that men do get stuck in, don't they? It's not just women end up in abusive relationships. It happens to men as well, but it's just not as commonly heard of because we tend to sort of keep it quiet, don't we?
No, absolutely, and it's a tough thing to talk about. Back then, it's easy now because I understand the whole process, and I just got on with my life. I got a building company, and I'd pretty much lost everything materialistically wise at the time. But I felt good, I felt strong, and I just carried on and was living a good life. And about a year and a half after that, I was involved in a road traffic accident where somebody sort of drove up the back of me at quite some speed.
Yeah.
I knew I'd done some damage, but again, being a self-employed guy, you just get on with it. I was back at work the next day, but I deteriorated quite physically, but struggled through with that. And
was it serious pain you were in as well? Was it like, oh shit?
It was it was unbelievable. I had one of these lecky walking sticks for going up and down mountains, which I hadn't used for a while. And after a couple of months, I relied on that every morning.
Right. So it really was debilitating then.
The pain was terrible. And I remember saying to somebody at the time that genuinely, if I'd have had a loaded gun, there were times where I would have used that on myself. We then went into the sort of crazy times of lockdown. So it was really difficult in terms of trying to get some treatment. Ultimately, I was x-rayed about 7 months after the accident. And they discovered that there was a hairline sort of crack in one of the facet joints.
So you broke your back then, basically.
In my lower back. The lower lumbar area. And I remember going to see the consultant after that, and his exact words were to me, "There's actually nothing we can do for what's gone on in your lower back, and all the cartilage between some of those joints are disintegrated and disappeared. So bone on bone."
That must have been killing then. Yeah, that would have been horrible.
Yeah. Eventually, they actually said to me, "We'll send you to a pain clinic to try and cope with the pain mentally." I managed to see another consultant, and they agreed that they would give me some spinal injections and sort of cortisone injections, which I went through with, and that was enlightening. It was absolutely fantastic.
Was it an immediate sort of like, was it straight away or?
Yeah, I mean, I was awake while it was done. That guy was great, absolutely fantastic, and I honestly that evening, but mentally, you're also very skeptical about your body, or I was at the time,
Yeah.
about pushing it. I had a building company, I was hands-on.
Yeah.
Um, and it was still a struggle, but to not have the pain was, yeah, I'd have paid any amount of money for that.
So
So,
where would you rate it at a scale of 10? 10 being really bad. Was it right up there?
yeah, I mean, an obvious one is to go above 10, but 10 out of 10, it was 10. Yeah, yeah.
That's bad. So did it with the pain with the injections and everything else? Is that something you still got to do now regularly to keep it topped up, or
No, unbelievably, I've sort of, uh, where I am in the last couple of years, in terms of mindset, I
yeah,
deal with it in a whole different way. I do get the odd twinge from it.
yeah,
I'm very, very careful with what I do.
yeah,
Um, it got me back into a sport that I loved years ago, which is swimming.
yeah.
Um, so I swim every day, pretty much every day, at least five, yeah, 5, 6 times a week,
That's good.
and that really keeps it at bay. I can't kick a football again. That's not a
No,
problem. So
yeah,
I'm just careful with what I do. So that was amazing for that to resolve the problem for me.
mm,
And during this whole process, um, I I always had a dream, and talking back in part one about where I was born,
yeah,
and a number of incidents. So I'd had a dream that not a dream there, that I wanted to write a book.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
one about my parents, but particularly
yeah,
about certain incidents that happened back in the early 1970s.
yeah,
So I actually realised that dream. Um,
yeah,
I worked with a chap called Stephen Gillen,
yeah,
who's fairly well known,
yeah.
and I put the story to him. Um, I'm a bit archaic. I put a PowerPoint presentation together and
Did
emailed
you?
it to him,
Yeah,
which I found out later on you're not meant to use PowerPoint.
yeah,
So yeah, we sort of met up, and he said, "This is an amazing story. We
yeah,
need to write it."
mm,
And the original idea was that I was going to write it. So I'm sort of jumping back a couple of months because of the back
yeah,
problems.
yeah,
Um, I kind of went off the boil a bit,
yeah.
which was interesting because Steve sort of badgered me and said, "This story needs to be done." And so we
Okay,
came to an agreement that we would
yeah,
work together on it. That he would
yeah,
he would be the author, and we set a start date, and we worked pretty much together for about 7 months
yeah,
putting this story together. So he would write most mornings. I
yeah.
was still working. He'd send me the stuff, and
Mm.
we moved it forward like that. And
Was it in a sense if he was ghostwriting it? Is that roughly what he was doing, or was he actually being creative with it as well?
oh, he's a very creative guy. So I almost, as the flow started to happen, we had the core of the story. I started doing more research,
Yeah.
and it was incredible the things that sort of came up on the story.
Mm.
And his own story is quite a remarkable story, and it's
Yeah.
it's almost a paradox that Steve in his early life,
Mm.
and his transformation in life, that we put together this true. It's a true story. It's a bit of
Yeah.
British crime history that had
Yeah.
never been written about. Um,
Yeah.
but Steve obviously has got the experience of. So we're talking about here about armed robbery,
Yeah.
murder of a police superintendent in
Yeah.
Blackpool. This was
Yeah.
1971. So it was very interesting having
Yeah.
Steve, who's lived that life, for us to
Mm.
put together this story, um, about this true story.
So I suppose
So
Steve could have like not padded it out, but he could have hit you with the right lingo and give it that feel, which maybe it was
absolutely,
lacking from your end. Yeah.
absolutely,
So
yeah,
what's
yeah,
the
yeah.
book called, Joe?
The book is called Injustice, Love and Honor.
Oh, good title. So when was that
Great.
released?
It was, do you know? I think it was published in 2023. Yeah,
Okay. Oh, that's good. And how did it feel to become a published author?
it was. It was. It was an amazing experience working
Yeah.
with Steve
Yeah.
because of his hard work and dedication. And so, in essence, I've had uh, a journey working with somebody writing a book on a daily basis,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's a target for me to do the same with some other projects. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was euphoric, absolutely euphoric,
Yeah. I find it
and
quite a healing process, right? And
yeah,
especially if it's
very much
about
so.
something you've been through.
Yeah, very
So,
much so. But
so
as we were doing this book,
yeah.
I embarked on, unbeknown to me, a spiritual awakening, and
So how did that start? How did that come about?
it was life was starting to change. Um, I was starting to look at things very, very differently. I was brought up as a Catholic, but kind of religion. I left religion. I questioned religion back when I was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And on reflection at the time, I remember having a quite a spiritual um, situation when I was about 8 or 9 years of age.
Mm.
Actually questioning myself as to who am I,
Yeah.
where am I on this planet, and that had always stuck with me. I never really, it hadn't concerned me. It just
Yeah.
always, I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
And in the summer, while we're doing this book, in the summer of 2021, it was a beautiful, beautiful summer, and
Yeah.
I remember one week I didn't sleep for 6 nights. I watched the
Really.
sun rise
Yeah.
and I watched the sun set 6 days in a row,
Wow.
and there were just very, I'm going to use the word bizarre, but quite
Yeah.
beautiful things happening.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually, I, it was a blissful state.
Mm.
We were in and out of lockdown. I genuinely felt like I was gliding. Um,
Yeah.
you know, however, at the same time, business was struggling. My
Yeah.
building company, we were in lockdown. And I remember thinking, I think I said to Steve, I said, "Oh, the way I feel, I hope this doesn't end."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
however, probably 4 or 5 months after that, unbeknown to me, because I didn't understand the process of spiritual awakening or this
Yeah.
seismic shift,
Yeah.
um, I then went through what's known in that field as the dark night of the souls, and this
Yeah.
was a massive depression that came on probably
Yeah.
within, I don't know, maybe a month.
Yeah.
And, you know, I basically fell off the cliff edge.
So
Absolutely.
why does that happen if this spiritual awakening and you're quite euphoric and meditated and you drop
Yeah.
off, what is there a reason for that?
Yeah. It's almost like a getting rid of the ego, the former self.
Yeah.
Um, you know, people that would be close to you, even family members, suddenly they see you in a different light, and you're still coming to terms, and continually. I mean, even now, sort of 5 years
Yeah.
on, um, you kind of move into different levels through the process.
Yeah.
And I think for all my life, I've always questioned myself, why do I do things the hard way? And this
Mm.
felt very, very difficult at the time,
Yeah.
and I didn't fully understand it. Um, so the depression became very, 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 very deep,
Yeah.
and business wise, it was a struggle. And you know, the voice in my head, there was a lot of negativity,
Yeah.
and I started having thoughts about I just don't want to be around. I
Yeah.
don't want to be alive, and that you know that continual loop of thinking like
Mm.
that. Um, you know, we create our own realities, and
Yeah.
I ended up, yeah, I was having massive suicidal thoughts, idolatry. Um, I'd even got to a point where I got some towels,
Mm.
sort of ripped them up and then tied them, and I actually made a noose and put it in my shower,
Yeah.
and I had it hung off the rail. My plan was to hang myself. I couldn't go high because there was nowhere to do it, but
Yeah.
I knew that I could do this in the shower.
Yeah.
For about 3 weeks, I would put that noose around my neck, and um, almost try and black out and
Mm.
just hope that my feet would slip away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So
it was tough, you know.
so you know when, if you don't mind me asking, so you know when you're going through that, so if anyone gets triggered easily, I suggest it's to the point where you maybe skip forward a few seconds if you have to. But when you're in that such a dark, dark place, and sometimes the only option is to feel like this is a viable option now, what's your thought process? Are you an autopilot as you're going in and think, right, this is it, get in the bath again, put it on my neck. What's actually going through your head at that time?
Yeah, it was almost like testing myself.
Mm,
So it felt like I was it. I was completely overwhelmed
mm,
with everything in life. I've got two beautiful children. Um, they weren't in it where I live. They're with their respective mothers.
yeah.
Um, I would think about them, but it was almost like, well, what am I to the world? What can I give anybody?
Mm,
I am genuinely better off out of this. And
yeah.
once I'm gone, I'm not going to know what's going on. Very selfish.
Mm,
Um, but ultimately, it's like when you get that low, you just can't see a way out of it.
yeah. It's a
And
horrible place to be, isn't it? When you
it
are
is.
down in those depths of despair and all you can see is darkness, and you're
Yes.
thinking, I can't keep going as I am. I
Mm,
don't really want to die, but I just
mm,
can't keep going as I am. So
yeah.
so
Yeah.
what was
I
it?
mean, I would write. I started writing. I suppose you'd call them. I don't like the word suicide, but
No.
notes. So I wrote letters to my son and my daughter.
Yeah.
I actually wrote letters to their respective mums and other people that had been in my life over the years.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'd written them up. I must have done that maybe 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an incredibly dark place to be, really dark.
So do you think it was the thought of your children kept you alive? Do you think that was the one of the
I
primary reasons?
I think that's definitely there,
Yeah.
and I would say on reflection now that clearly there was within me there's a higher power, or within everybody there's a higher
Yeah.
power, and you know that came that came through to ultimately stop me from doing it.
Yeah.
I did get on one occasion taken to hospital,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
but you kind of you sit there and you're able to talk about it. So there were two sides to it. There was exactly how I was feeling, but then this the real part of me.
Mm.
I should have been saying in hospital, I want help, I want help, I want help.
Yeah.
But I suppose you almost feel embarrassed by it. And I
Yeah.
ended up apologising to everybody for what I'd done. And
It's a tough place to be though, isn't it? Because I know
mm,
when I was at the end of my, use the word, end of my tether back
yeah,
in 2006, I was ready to go, ready to check out, and
yeah,
I thought I got a choice now. So I went to the doctor actually. Said, "Oh, I
hmm,
need some help. I don't want to be around anymore." And I was in fucking bits, mate. I was crying,
mm,
uncontrollably crying. And he said, "Can you get to the hospital safe?" I said, "I can, but I need to know I'm going to get help." So I got there, and he kept me in overnight, and I was ready to go. And then they released me, not released me. They let me out the next
yeah,
morning, and it's when I was involved in all that, and I got back to the car, and I didn't switch the phones on. I sat down, just fucking sat in the passenger seat for some strange reason. I got a knife in my glove
mm,
compartment, a little lock knife, and I grabbed it out and just stuck it in my wrist. And there's a little scar on my wrist now, and I'm thinking, I just fought with kids, and I threw the
mm,
knife on the floor. I thought, oh,
yeah,
no, I can't do this. I cannot do this. This is not me. And you have that like an epiphany, isn't it? You think, right,
mm,
let's fucking fight. I will not be beaten by this. Is that how you
yeah.
felt? Did you feel sort of half liberated then when you decided that you weren't gonna do it? Did you get a sudden boost of like, right, let's fucking get this now, let's do this, or was it a
No,
gradual climb up out of that
yeah,
hole?
no, I didn't have that then. And actually, because of my actions, um, the place that I was living in and renting.
Mm.
Um, in essence, I was asked to leave,
Yeah.
um, which then rendered me, I was in a homeless state.
Well, that's kind
Uh,
of them, isn't it? Thank you very
yep,
much.
yep. And I had at that time, I had a very small Vauxhall Combo van,
Yeah.
um, which is like a fridge. It was full of building tools, so I couldn't even get in the back.
Yeah.
I had a yoga mat and I stretched it across the front seats.
And that was your
And,
bed.
you got the handbrake kind of sticking into you as well.
Bit well,
And
same place as your daughter is right now, I expect. Sorry to taint a serious conversation there, but yeah, I know what you mean.
and I, but I was functioning,
Yeah.
and I, I'd taken on a building project,
Mm.
which actually was going to give me and the guys that worked for me probably about 5 or 6 months' work, and that was running
Easy.
really smoothly.
Yeah.
Then the usual thing happened. It was in an organisation we were working for. The payments
Mm.
started getting slower and slower and slower. So this
Yeah.
impacted more on where I am. It's getting tougher. And again, this is about mindset and what we tell ourselves.
Mm.
And suddenly I'm so the suicidal thoughts haven't really diminished.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking, it's impounding it actually more. I'm thinking I'm going to go bloody bankrupt if this,
So
because
it
we're
was still a viable option then to start to go index, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and it's almost that because ultimately I talked myself into bankruptcy because
Yeah.
after at that point of homelessness, some people, God bless them, stepped up to help me. So I'd have a night here, a bit of sofa surfing, that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
But there was it felt like there was still no way out of this, and other
Yeah.
things were still crumbling, the little
Yeah.
bits that I had left. And yeah, I was talking myself into bankruptcy. And
Yeah.
on a particular Sunday, it was a very horrible January day.
Mm.
I kind of went missing.
Yeah.
My beautiful son was in touch with me. I was
Yeah.
turning my phone off, then I was turning it on. He was
Yeah.
concerned. He was worried, and
Yeah.
I was actually I was actually in a pub in Bristol,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. Next thing I know, I've got the police calling me,
Yeah.
turning my phone off. Um, God bless them, they parked outside, these two officers, and when the phone was back on, they
Yeah.
ran me and said, "Look, we don't want to come into the pub because
Yeah.
we don't want it to kick off or have a scene."
Yeah.
And I said, "Listen, there'll be no scene.
Yeah.
I'll come out to you."
Yeah.
And I remember walking out there, and actually, my son was there, and my ex-wife, his mum,
Yeah.
and you know, I wasn't arrested. I was put into the back of a police car,
Yeah.
and I remember sitting in the back, and the two police officers were sort of making different phone calls, and
Mm.
they're talking about getting. Well, they sectioned me. Ultimately, they
Yeah.
took me to South Mid Hospital,
Yeah.
and I ended up in a secure unit.
So let's have a look at that one then. So back in a police car, did you know you were going to get sectioned at that time?
I was happy
Did
with
you want to be
anything, Rich.
sectioned? Would you have taken it? Because it's like, I'm going to be safe, no stress. I'm away from the world. I can get
Yeah,
in
it's
there and
interesting.
shut the
It's
world out.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because other thoughts that I've been having about
Mm.
escape
Mm.
from life, one of them, bizarrely, was I come up with some crazy ideas. I thought about robbing a bank
To get yourself locked up.
to get
Win-win, isn't
myself
it? If you
locked.
don't get caught, you get
Yeah,
some money. If you get caught,
I don't care if they give me the money. I don't want it.
yeah, yeah, just put
I
me away.
just want. I want to get caught to go
Yeah,
away so that I
yeah,
haven't not got to deal with this, but just like I need to escape all of
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Um, Crazy ideas, banks, bloody supermarkets just causing a scene.
yeah.
So actually, yeah, maybe, looking back, maybe that was an option, you know, get locked
Mm.
up for a period of time or getting sectioned. It's a cry for help. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, ultimately I was, thankfully, I went down a section route.
So what was that like then? So you go through a series of assessments, I assume, when you get in there and they figure out what's wrong, medicate you. How did that play out for you
Well,
when you got sectioned?
so that arriving there, the police took me in there. It took a number of hours, so I think
Mm.
I got into the secure unit maybe at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I'm in my work clothes, which I've been in for the last couple of days,
Oh, you
and
must have
they
been
put,
stinking then.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, bizarrely, the things we do and people do when we're in that situation. I haven't brushed my teeth probably for 2 months. I had a
Yeah.
bloody long beard,
Yeah.
and I just remember. I always remember the sort of nurse there. She was dressed in. It reminded me of sort of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Yeah.
and she had this big belt around what she was wearing. It was a brown
Yeah.
uniform, and I
Yeah.
was taken into this. Well, it's a cell at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's no bedding. It's just a
Oh.
slab raised off the floor.
Oh, really? So it's worse than a
Yeah.
prison cell then.
Um,
Is that because of it's called an act in prison to prevent any sort of risk of
yeah,
suicide? There's no ligatures, there's nothing
absolutely.
for you
So
to.
there's no light switches. There's
Yeah.
no even the blinds are within the window panes themselves.
Yeah.
Um, it had an ensuite toilet and shower, but there was nothing that. Not that I was having those thoughts, but obviously you
No.
understand the reason why.
Yeah.
And there was quite a big sort of spiles different to a prison cell door.
Yeah.
And but I remember looking through that, and it was like looking through the bottom of a milk bottle where everything outside is like curved
Yeah. Yeah.
and obscure. So I think they would check every 15 minutes, but th- God bless this nurse. She was so nice. She actually came into when I first went into the room after that initial assessment,
Yeah.
and she sat down with me. I think I laid on the bed. I was absolutely shattered,
Yeah.
and she said to me, "said You know, you're going to be all right." She said, "I can sense it in you."
Yeah.
And they were comforting words.
Yeah.
They helped, not massively, but it was like she could see that she could see what I was going through.
Yeah.
And they would bring. I remember they brought a cup of tea, and the cup's got no handle on it, and
Mm.
it just tastes of plastic.
Was it a
And
plastic cup then as well?
you know the
Oh,
score,
yeah, I
yeah,
know 'em. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what was
And
the food like?
well, um, I managed to sleep actually, although there was
Oh, that would have been good.
a light, there's a light in there, and they're checking because you can hear
Mm.
them coming down and checking for the door every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the following morning, they offered me some food. I think it was a packed sandwich or whatever. Um, I was desperate. I wanted to have a cigarette,
Yeah.
and they said, well, there's no smoking in here, but they could give you an electronic cigarette.
Yeah.
And that tasted just like the cup that I was drinking the tea from. I'll never
Yeah.
forget that.
Yeah.
And so that day I hung about, and I was waiting. I didn't know what was going to go on. I didn't have my phone. They'd taken everything off me.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I felt, yeah, that that door was locked, but I kind of felt safe.
Mm, I
And it
can
was a
relate
time
to
to,
that, mate.
yeah, it was a time to reflect
Yeah.
to a degree. Um, And then I think it was the following day they said, right, we're gonna do an assessment with you. Um, so I was taken, out of the room I was in, and that was quite a spooky experience
Yeah.
because now you're seeing other people that are there. I was
Yeah.
taken into I suppose what you call I call it a common room. I can't think of another word for it.
Yeah. Like a community area sort of thing.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm sat as I am now, and then I've got six individuals in a horseshoe sat
Yeah.
around me.
Oh, right.
Um,
Like
I think
psychiatrists, and psychologists and all that.
psychiatrist, a psychologist. I
Yeah.
remember there was an Indian guy here. So you're the focal point, and we spoke. And
Yeah.
um, I knew part of me wanted them to go right. We're gonna say you need to be here for three
For
months. There was an
yeah.
element of me that wanted that. So that's back to
Yeah.
like wanting to be locked up.
Yeah.
But I think the truth in me, the not resistance, sorry, the resilience in me
Yeah.
and the honesty in me. I remember talking to him, and I looked each and every one as I spoke to them in
Yeah.
the face. And this wasn't bullshit and bravado.
No.
I wanted to do it, and I was actually saying, and I spoke about what I'd been going through and life and what had gone on. and that maybe went on for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours,
yeah,
and I was taken back um, to my room, and
mm,
then they came in, and somebody came in, and they went through it with me, and they said, "We're not going to hold you,"
yeah.
you
What was your
know,
thought then? Were you half gutted, or were you thinking, oh,
50-50 to
yeah? I
be honest,
imagine it could have gone either
because
way, couldn't you?
yeah, I mean, we'd spoken in that meeting about my current situation at that moment.
Yeah,
I was homeless,
yeah,
you know. Um, One of them said they would try and make some phone calls and see if they can help me out. Um, Ultimately, I got all my possessions back,
yeah,
um, and I think it was just getting dark. It was January, and um, I'm sort of released out of that secure door. I'm still within the hospital grounds.
yeah.
Excuse me. It's drizzling with rain.
Oh,
Lights starting to dim. The bright lights are on the street lights,
yeah,
and there was a bike shed there for people to park their bikes. And I
yeah,
went and sat under that because it was drizzling.
yeah.
I had some cigarettes in my pocket,
Steamed into them.
so I started smoking them. And I think I sat there for 10 or 15 minutes. And
Yeah,
one of the psychiatrists came out, and he was getting on his bike.
yeah,
And his exact words were to me, he said, "Look, we will try and do as much as we can,
yeah,
but Joe, you've got this in you. You're going to
yeah,
be all right. It's going to be tough."
yeah,
And they were compassionate words,
yeah,
and he meant them. Um, it helped,
yeah,
but as he disappeared, I'm now sat in this bike shed
yeah,
thinking, what next? And then I guess, that's the fighter in you, that's the resilience, that's the strength. You think,
yeah,
I've just got to get on with it. I have no idea what the next hour is going to bring, but I
yeah,
started walking out of there. They charged my phone up for me.
yeah,
I remember looking at my bank app. I think I had about 14, 15 quid in my bank.
yeah,
Um, and I made some phone calls. Um, and somebody that had been in my life many years ago came to the rescue,
yeah.
and they offered me a place to stay.
Oh wow.
And therefore, the next part of the journey starts.
Yeah.
And,
So
it's
what year
not,
was that, Joe? When did you get released from being sectioned and plotted with your mate? Was that, I'm
mm, mm,
guessing that was like
mm.
recently or
No, that
fairly
was,
recent.
yeah, the timeline. That was
22?
the early 2022.
22, yeah.
Yeah, January
Yeah.
22. Yeah. So, you know, thank God the person who came and sort of rested, they offered me a place to stay.
Yeah.
And I was a bit of a zombie, I think, for maybe a month. Um, I was still struggling. The basic stuff, personal
Yeah.
care still wasn't of an interest to me at the time.
So you're
Um,
seriously depressed, aren't you, at that stage? You're probably so
Absolutely.
low. Did they get you medicated at all, or did you fight through without medication?
No, they offered sort of antidepressants, and
Yeah.
for me, I thought, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I think a care worker came out from the psyche unit.
Yeah.
They gave me lots of stuff on CBT, and that was almost a portal, a door opening, I suppose. Now,
Yeah.
the whole spiritual awakening a year before, I kind
Mm.
of started thinking, I don't understand it, but
Mm.
maybe this has been telling me something, and this could ultimately save me.
Yeah.
Um, I was still having every day, you wake up and those thoughts, could it be today? Try and override that. I managed to download a few apps.
Yeah.
I started doing like positive affirmations,
Yeah.
but they felt very, very alien because I mean, I fully understand that, and we'll talk about it later, that telling yourself something positive
Mm.
when everything's really not
It's
very
hard. It
positive
feels
is
superficial,
like,
doesn't it,
well, it feels
sometimes?
like you're lying,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So when you got severe depression, for anyone out there listening who's maybe suddenly realizing that shit, this could be, or they've been through it, or they could go through it. What are
mm,
those signs like when you're waking up and when you're first starting to stir, if you've slept at all?
mm.
What does it feel like so people can understand what depression, how it grips you? Is it once it's got you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it is darkness, and it is the the mental dialogue that we all have in our minds. That mental dialogue is just feeding negativity.
Mm,
Um, I mentioned earlier about self-care, not wanting to brush my teeth, not wanting to
yeah,
shower. It's almost like I just don't want any of this. I
effort
know I've
in
got to
this.
do it. It's
Yeah,
effort.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Eating is another one.
yeah.
I don't want to
Anxiety,
eat.
much anxiety when you sort
Well,
of like
you
go through your day, or were you okay?
look at as I understand anxiety, that's thinking about the future. So yes, what you've got here is
Mm,
a very depressive state.
mm.
You've got the moment that you're in, and you've also got to think, well, what's the future hold for me? So now you've got depression and anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Lethal combination, isn't it? It's just
absolutely,
horrible.
absolutely, and it is. Um, yeah, it's totally debilitating.
Yeah.
I'd say after maybe 5 or 6 weeks of where I was, I'd force myself just
Mm,
to go out for a walk.
yeah.
I knew what the basic requirements were to
Mm,
get to the next level.
yeah.
One step at a time. But
Mm.
in those that was even just doing that was tough.
Would you
Um,
have said you're ever in a state where you're almost catatonic, where you just like sit there and just stare at a wall, or,
yeah,
because that's when there's no, after that, it's a viable option to string
yeah,
yourself up, isn't it? After that state,
yeah,
you and
absolutely.
if people don't realize what catatonic is, it means you just sit there and you glaze over, and you literally
Mm,
you might be watching a TV, but you're not watching a TV. You want to change the channel,
yeah,
but you can't be asked to change the channel. It's
yeah,
stuff like that, isn't it? Where you just
yeah.
got nothing
You
left
know,
in the tank.
yeah. And my son would come and see me, and you feel incredible. That was I couldn't talk to him. He's coming out of compassion and love, and this is his dad. And I almost when he arrived, I almost wanted him to go because I knew that this wasn't me, but
Yeah,
I couldn't bring myself even then um, to make any effort.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a dark place to be.
Yeah. So how long was your sort of journey to sort of climb out of that hole?
It was a gradual one, and I'd say probably 2 months in, um, I'd managed. I've never in my life had to. I call it signing on. It's called universal credit in
Yeah.
these days. But you know, certain people were trying to point me in the right direction, so I would go and sign on. They would see me once a week, so that was getting me out of the house.
Yeah.
I was starting to do the walking, and whilst I was walking, I was listening to positive affirmations.
Yeah.
Um, and that actually, looking back on it, that telling yourself those things just
Mm,
didn't feel right.
yeah.
Um, but I stuck with that. Um, Probably 2.5, 3 months in, I wouldn't say I was feeling massively better,
Mm,
but I thought I've now got to do the next thing. I don't want to be on. I've got no money. Universal
yeah.
credit is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, so actually, I thought, you know what? I wonder if I can get a job. I
Mm,
had the business that I had gone.
yeah.
Everything I owned had gone. I'd now the bankruptcy had kicked in,
Yeah.
um, and I thought I'll do anything. And I actually ended up driving for one of the supermarket chains,
Yeah.
the home
Yeah.
delivery, and
Ideal,
that
mate. Yeah.
it was a really really humbling experience.
Mm.
I don't think anybody has, unless you've done it. No one has a clue what goes on behind the scenes
No, no.
to get those bags of shopping to people's front doors.
Yeah.
And I only lasted a couple of weeks. I've got to be honest. It was it
What went wrong?
I,
It just
I
wasn't for you, or
I don't. It wasn't so much about a career.
yeah,
Because I didn't see it as a career.
yeah,
Um, I think it was. I, I had the responsibility of driving this refrigerated big wagon,
yeah,
and I'm not better. In fact, I'm nowhere near better. I'm putting on a bit of a front to do this,
yeah.
and I'd be so that state of just driving along sometimes, thinking, I could just drive into that bloody wall. So
Yeah.
I was still massively having ending it thoughts that were
So
going on.
you kind of your head's in the place of I've gone through all this so far
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do this. I'm thinking, no, I
yeah,
need more than this. This
yeah,
isn't going to pull me out mentally, is it?
absolutely. No,
Yeah,
no. If anything, it could sort of set me back.
yeah,
And ultimately, bloody danger as well, driving like
mm,
that because the crazy hours that you were doing. So,
yeah,
yeah. So back onto universal credit.
yeah,
Then I started really looking into the spiritual awakening. I
yeah,
wanted to understand what I'd gone through and
yeah.
almost how that blissful state, how
Those six
have
days
I,
you had of the sunrise and sunset, and then the falling
yeah,
off the cliff. How
yeah.
did that
I
happen?
mean,
Yeah,
the blissful state was maybe 3 or 4 months in fairness. Those 6 days were
yeah,
very intense.
yeah,
And I was thinking, well, what's this all about then? So I started, I went to the library, got a few books, did a bit of research, and I started reading Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle, Power and Now. I don't
yeah.
know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle.
No,
He's he's possibly one of the biggest spiritual teachers
mm,
right now
yeah,
on the planet. Um, it didn't make a lot of sense reading that book, but certain things resonated.
mm,
So it's like joining up the dots. So it's a
yeah,
gradual process. That book led to another book, which led to another book, and suddenly I started looking into Buddhism as well.
yeah,
And what I worked out is everybody's telling the same story, but telling it differently.
mm,
And that is that how the mind works and how the mind can control us, but we have the ability to actually reprogram ourselves and
yeah,
reprogram the subconscious part of our mind. Um, you know, most of the planet live in an unconscious state. We
mm.
just we just do what we've got to do. I started looking at breathing techniques. Wim Hof was somebody that I sort of
Oh, the
stumbled across.
Iceman.
The Iceman,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And as well as the techniques and the ethos behind all of these, um, well, I've lost my train of thought. My apologies.
yeah. You were going
Um,
through the books.
yeah, go through the books. I'm just looking on my board. I've got some notes and
Get yourself a PowerPoint out next time.
get myself a PowerPoint out. Yeah.
I'd like to present this slide.
Um, they're all telling the same story, albeit
Yeah,
differently. I'm back on it. And
yeah,
so you take elements and suddenly you start joining the dots. And it all, for me, and hopefully for lots of other people, it starts to make sense.
mm,
So I started putting that into practice.
yeah,
Um, and I call it doing the inner work. And
mm,
it is tough because
yeah,
it's almost like you want to reprogram yourself, but again, it's back to that, like the affirmations. It's almost like
yeah,
you're telling yourself lies.
yeah,
Um, Suddenly, I discovered gratitude, which is, you know,
yeah,
fundamentally that's a massive. But again, when you're down there,
mm,
it's a real struggle to think, well, what am I grateful for?
yeah,
You know. But
yeah,
then you start working it out, and you realise, well, you know what? I am grateful that I woke up this morning. I'm grateful that I got another opportunity to do this.
yeah,
And slowly that starts making a difference in
yeah.
life.
Do you know what I've found as well? a reset is always a good thing, isn't it? If you can strip
mm,
yourself down to the bare bones of who you are, and having that time, for me, it was time away in prison to have seven
yeah,
and a half years to focus on yourself, think inwards
mm,
about who you are, and
mm.
you can create the best version of yourself. And all of a sudden, you appreciate everything.
Yeah,
Once you've lost everything, everything is
yeah,
valuable.
I think what you do is you create the true version of yourself
Mm,
that
yeah,
that never really existed because we live the lives that we've lived because of the society and conditioning that we live in.
yeah. Tainted by the material world, aren't we?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So how are you now? How's your life sort of transpired since the spiritual awakening and reading quite a lot about it? Where did that take you next?
Um, right now, my life is absolutely fantastic.
That's
I have,
good.
mm, you know, along this journey, happiness is a choice,
Mm,
you know, and you mentioned the material things. I own nothing apart from a car and the clothes that I stand up in. Um,
and a rather large dildo.
do
Just
you
joking,
think
of
I can
course.
get some money from this on that topic? Yeah,
On
um,
OnlyFans, yeah, no problem.
OnlyFans or something like that. Um, you know, doing all the work, and
Yeah,
it's re-engineering yourself. It's
yeah,
inner work. It's understanding yourself. It's putting things in place. So, for me, meditation.
yeah,
That is an almost, it's a daily practice, if not an hourly practice.
yeah,
You know, you don't have to be sat in a certain meditative position. You can go out for a walk. You can be driving along. So it's all about being present and bringing
mm,
yourself back to this moment because that's all we've got right now. Is
yeah,
all we have.
yeah,
So yeah, it you know I, the suicidal thoughts stuck with me, Rich, for
yeah.
I would say a good 18 months, 2 years, but
Quite a
they
long
got
time.
less and less. What I
Yeah,
used to do is, in that 18 months, 2 years, I would drive the amount of times I drove down to Ost. It wasn't
mm,
a massive thought, but it was there.
yeah,
And so this is again allowing the mind and the
mm,
thought process. So I was ruminating on stuff. And I'd
yeah,
sit at off services, get a Costa,
yeah,
and I might be there an hour, I might be there 4 hours.
yeah,
And then I drive home. I don't know how many times I did that.
yeah,
Um, it's just the process that I had to go through. And
yeah,
then, with a positive mindset and learning more stuff and understanding myself, um, new doors started opening for
yeah,
me, new portals. And I I'm going to say my guru definitely is Eckhart Tolle. I also
yeah,
came across a guy called Ram Dass, who was an American guy
yeah,
who became quite prevalent in the 60s. So meditation, mindfulness, exercise,
mm,
that made a huge difference. And I started rebuilding my life. I managed to get a couple of other little jobs along the way, different jobs. I've rented, you know, what we would refer to as sort of bedsit land. But I had
yeah,
a nice room in a nice house.
yeah,
And for those 2.5 years, I actually locked myself away. I went out to work, but I didn't.
yeah,
I did. It's not that I didn't want to socialise. I actually headphones in,
yeah,
and I learnt, and I
mm,
learnt about myself,
yeah.
and it just all started making sense.
So how do you feel now? You're good
Absolutely top of the world. Yeah,
because you're really
honestly.
chilled. You're consistently chilled and you're consistently positive as well. Which is
Yeah,
even when we could have lost our shit when we were recording part one by not logging on.
yeah.
It's like we just took it as it
I think
comes.
your references to dildo may
Yeah,
may have thrown me off a little bit. So I thank
standard.
you for that because
You're welcome.
every day's a learning curve,
Yeah,
and
I could see you eyeing up my mic. That's what I'm thinking. You get your eyes off
um,
that's mine.
yeah, it's I'm in a I would describe it like this: mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, I'm great,
Good.
and I, I I am eternally grateful to Ram Dass,
Mm,
Eckhart Tolle, and many other people along the way,
yeah.
um, because they opened up for me what it's all about and an
Yeah.
understanding of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
So
for me, it's about being present. So
yeah.
yeah,
So you're coaching now then? Was that the sort of the
yeah.
branch you're
So
looking into?
back in January, it's something that even back in my 20s and 30s, something I never understood about myself. I never understood why I could meet a complete stranger
Mm,
on a park bench, on an aeroplane, whatever, and within a minute max, they're telling me their life story.
yeah. Yeah.
And
So
then
you
they'd
you
say
be
to you, "Oh, I've never told anybody this." And it's like,
yeah.
so back then, it was almost like, I have no idea why you chose me
Yeah.
to tell that story.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. So back when I was doing the book with Steve and a lovely lady called Daphne,
Yeah.
prior to the suicide attempt, so that spiritual awakening moment, Daphne said to me one day on a Zoom call, she said, "Joe, you are a raving empath."
Mm,
I went, I knew what empathy was.
mm,
I didn't realize you could be an empath. So again, in the healing process for me, that's one of the things that I looked at, and actually understanding what an empath is and
mm.
being one, that was a bit of a game changer.
Well, you how can I put it? You emit an aura which makes people feel safe around you, and that's how I feel when we caught up last year. There's a calmness about you, which puts people in an immediate state of feeling, I feel okay around this person. I feel
Mm,
like I can talk. I can tell you anything. Yeah,
mm.
and I think that's what you've got is that natural calming sort of sense about you. That's what I feel anyway.
Bless you for that. I really,
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. And yeah, it, sometimes it's difficult to realize exactly who and what you are because it,
Mm.
it wasn't what you were when you were in your 20s and 30s.
No,
And
but what are we when our 20s, 30s? We're
yeah,
led.
absolutely. Well, we're learning, aren't we? And that's the journey
Yeah,
of life. It truly is. That's the journey of
yeah.
life. And oh, that's really kind. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So you've had a really bumpy ride, and you've ended up in a much better place.
Hmm.
And there's a lot that people can learn from your journey. So what I'm tending to do now is at the sort of the back end of the interview, I've got a series of questions which I'm going to ask you. These are going to be like from your lived experience, from your knowledge and understanding, nothing too intrusive. So, and it's just so people can maybe sort of pick up on these and understand how your advice might help someone who's maybe been through what
Mm,
you've been through. So,
mm.
there's about 10 questions. If you don't know the answer, you haven't got an answer, just say next. We'll go from there.
Okay.
So, not even quick fire. Take your
I feel
time.
like I'm a mastermind.
You are now. Hang on. I've got the right color set behind me, haven't I?
Specialist chosen subject.
There we go. So Joe Specialist is Joe. So mate, so I guess one of the first questions is, and we've probably answered this anyway, but how did you get through your darkest days?
Inner strength.
Inner strength, yeah, that resilience that you mentioned.
Mm.
What does that feel? How does that manifest itself? How do you know that you've got that inner strength?
I think well, I know it's becoming aware that you're aware.
Mm, yeah, yes. And you've answered this one already, but once again, what or who has inspired you? Apart from me, of course.
Mm. Oh, that's a great question.
Mm,
Um, obviously, I mean, there'd be a number of different people throughout life, obviously, but
yeah,
we're here right now in this moment. So, yeah, Eckhart Tolle,
yeah,
um,
as mentioned just now, yeah,
yeah, Ram Dass, yeah.
yeah. And again, you kind of answered this really earlier on in this episode is about where do you go to for support? And I think the fact was that sometimes you didn't, did you? But other times you
No.
did.
Where would I go to for support now? Was
Yeah,
that
yeah,
yeah.
or even back then. And I mean, or what would your advice be to someone who should go for support? What would you say?
Um, ultimately, you need to get out of you what is going on. So, in answer to that question, where do I go now? Um, I go within myself
Mm, yeah,
because actually all the answers are within us. We're always looking for external things to give us
yeah,
the answers,
mm,
um, but it's all within. And as we're talking about that, and we haven't spoken about what I'm going to mention now, and there's a reason for bringing it up, you'll understand it.
yeah,
Um, February of last year, which was 2024,
yeah,
um, I was awoken in the night. I felt someone had stabbed me in my side.
yeah.
Um, and I will for this moment, because I, I, I was diagnosed with abdominal cancer,
Oh
um, sort
shit.
of last, so that started February and it
Yeah.
took about 5 weeks with everything else. And one of the problems is I do have a weak bladder now after
Yeah.
surgery, Rich.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
is it possible
Yeah.
to have a toilet break,
Yes. Shall I put a pause on this one?
if
We'll be
you
back.
wouldn't mind?
We'll be back right now. Okay, so Joe has returned with the map of Africa halfway down his leg because he's been dribbling for the last half an hour. Sorry about that. So you got hit with this cancer. So are you clear now? Are you all good now, or are you
Yeah,
still?
well, I'm actually I'm on chemotherapy, and
Yeah.
and when I say chemo, it's a chemo tablet,
Yeah.
which I take it one tablet, take it every day,
Yeah.
and I'm on that for 3 years.
Or is it a slow
So
burner then? Basically, it's not like an intense thing. It's like a
thankfully,
gradual.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had I went in for surgery May the 31st,
Yeah.
2024,
Yeah.
and due to the location and the size of the tumor,
Mm.
as with a lot of these things, you sort of go in and you're told that it is attached. It's not within all the tubes inside, it's in the cavity. So it's
Yeah.
attached to a number of sort of vital organs.
Oh.
There's a main artery that runs. This is my right side as we're looking.
Yeah.
So we had vascular surgeons for the operation.
Yeah.
I'd been prepped for the likelihood of a colostomy,
Oh.
which may have been permanent or temporary.
Yeah.
So, I went in on the 31st of May into Southmead under the Macmillan team.
Yeah.
And I think the surgery was, I think they told me it was about 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
Um, and I came round, and the first thing I did, I put my hand down
Yeah.
because they'd actually marked on me where the colostomy was going to
You're checking
the
if there's in a
colostomy would
bag. If
be.
there was a
Yeah,
bag there. Yeah.
100%. And um, you know what? When I went through the train, they were showing you how you would use that colostomy. I was kind of thinking, listen, I'm grateful for this training, but
Yeah.
this is not going to happen to me.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I came round. You're laid up for sort of 12 hours, and I've got a scar right down the front of my stomach,
Yeah.
and thankfully they got the whole tumor out.
Good.
No colostomy. It's called a resection. So I've had some, I was a builder, so I kind of refer to it a bit like underground drainage.
Yeah.
They cut out some dodgy pipes and reconnected it all.
Yeah.
And yes, and recovery was amazing. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, I came out on the 2nd of June, the sun was shining. I was able to sit in the garden, and I life just sort of carried on really,
Yeah.
and I
Oh
didn't make any massive changes.
no.
And I would like to say, Rich, one of the things, because I've spoken to a number of people about this, and I've spoken to people going through it,
Yeah.
and people say to me, "How did you, when you were told that?" Be- because I was in this journey, even up to February last year, and it's
Mm.
always sort of changing and getting better. I was in a great place spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah.
Now, physically,
Yeah.
I've been handed this. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that the way I look upon life is, um, if you treat everything in a positive way, and I actually used to, before that tumor came out,
Yeah.
I used to talk to it
Yeah.
and I used to
Yeah.
send it love.
Yeah. It's part of you, isn't it? It's not
Yeah,
necessarily wanted,
yeah.
but it's there, isn't it?
And, you know, it just, yeah, it's, I know this sounds bizarre. I was chatting to somebody earlier today who's going through something similar. And I actually said, you know what? Everything in life
Mm.
that I've gone through, and a lot of the things we've spoken about today, everything, including this, including what we've spoken about tonight,
Yeah.
I've reached the point where I am truly grateful for that experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I
Well, it
was
shapes
chosen.
and molds you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It creates a
yeah,
person. So we've
yeah.
got a couple more questions left, Joe,
Back to the
because I
questions,
want to.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious because you've got some good answers. So, what's your best coping strategy?
Mindfulness.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you do differently, if anything?
In terms of the past,
Yeah. Yeah. Would you change anything?
not a single thing.
No. Because if you change one thing, you're not going to be you, are you? No, you won't be this person of, or
Absent
not.
every,
You'd be a different version of yourself, wouldn't you?
yeah, I mean, when you're going through it, you can't understand it. But
Yeah.
when you make that breakthrough, and then you carry, once you make that breakthrough spiritually, I remember reading this saying you can't stop it because
Yeah.
sometimes when something's great, you kind of think, "Oh, I could do with a break from that,"
Yeah.
um, and that really resonated with me actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
So this is probably not an appropriate question for someone who's in a positive state of mind, but I won't use the word hate because I got it on there, but what grinds your gears?
nothing.
Nothing. That's a good answer, mate. What's your best moment? I won't say define a moment because maybe I haven't hit a define a moment yet, but what is your best moment so far? What would you look back on and think, yeah, that was a that was good.
Oh, I think we'd be here for another hour if I said about all the great things.
Too many
But
positives.
actually,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a paradoxical answer to that.
Yeah.
Honestly, everything,
Yeah. That's a good
everything.
outlet, though, isn't it? Brilliant, isn't
Yeah,
it? So
yeah.
you've probably answered this question by that last question: is what makes you smile? Everything.
um, yeah. See, these questions are interesting because one of the things of mindfulness
Mm,
is actually we're all going to have thoughts, but it's to have good thoughts.
mm,
So now I'm sort of stepping out of being maybe present and actually trying to answer that question.
mm.
What makes me smile? Life,
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
I'm
And then
alive.
that's you.
Yeah, and that's
Do
not
you know what?
linked to the cancer. I'm alive for all that I'm
Yeah,
here. I'm 57,
yeah.
and I'm grateful
You.
for everything.
There was this really interesting thing on TikTok I saw years ago, or a couple of years ago, and it's a chap saying about people who are negative, and it says people keep saying, oh, I've got to do this, oh, I've got to that, got to do this, I've got to do that. And he said, if you just change one letter in that sentence, it changes life, and it's changed the O to an E. I get to do the washing. I get to go
yeah,
outside. And
yeah,
that's that positive look. I said, I'm thankful to be in a position where I can do these things.
yeah. I'll give you another one like that, and that is, and I even struggle saying it, so I'll spell it CANT.
Oh, that,
I
yeah,
can't,
yeah,
and that is because of that mental dialogue going around.
mm, yeah.
You just got to take that T off it. I
I can.
can, I
Yeah,
can.
yeah. No such thing as can't, because that
Yeah,
normally just means people say they won't.
yeah. And honestly, what I mentioned earlier, I think we create our own realities.
Mm,
So what everybody on this planet, what we think is what we get.
mm. Manifestation in
Yeah.
a degree. Yeah,
So the positive side of that is, yeah, you can you've got to think it, and you've also got to believe it as well.
yeah,
But if that voice in your head is feeding negative thoughts,
mm,
you're going to get more of the same.
yeah,
That's what we're energy, and that's what it delivers to us.
yeah.
You know, the subconscious mind doesn't understand right and wrong.
No,
It delivers what you're telling it.
what we're telling it to. Yeah,
Yeah, and we
yeah,
don't have to verbalize it. We're all
mm,
set. Yeah, we all do it. Of course we do.
yeah,
So replace those. It sounds easy. Replace those negatives with positives, and changing words that you use.
yeah,
It's a game changer. It's an,
yeah,
you know, I honestly, I sit here as well. You yourself as well. You know, I'm living. I'm living proof. I'm living history
mm,
that it's a game changer.
yeah. And the way you got to look at it is if you start changing your vocabulary to positive words, you
Mm,
start to think them automatically. If you're thinking them, they're beginning
yeah,
to happen, aren't they?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
last question, Joe. What defines you?
Ooh. The first, I'll go with it. The first thing that springs to mind, um, calmness is mastery.
Yeah, chilled, relaxed. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. May I ask, how could someone get hold of you? Should they require to speak to you, or some coaching, or working to buy your book? What's your
Yeah, I
what's your
mean,
handle? How can we find? And we'll put the links on here anyway.
brilliant. Yeah. So I've set up um, a business. It's called Empowered Path for Everyone. Um, to get to that, the website address is my name, joeloney.com. And
Easy
that
to
will take
find.
you straight to Empowered Path for Everyone. And from there, they can contact me directly.
And I'm going to say a highly inappropriate thing, as opposed to Joe Looney when you were in the in the nut house about 4 or 5 years ago.
I could tell you another story about that, mate. We'll do that another time.
On the next one. Joe, it's
Yeah,
been a pleasure. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. And don't forget
Rich,
to like,
Rich, I just sorry to
yeah, of
interrupt.
course.
Genuinely, I want to thank you, mate. Um, we met many years ago,
We did.
and I knew your dad really well, as you know,
Yeah.
and I think those people that are in our lives
Yeah.
would be loving this. He
I
was a
believe
top
so,
guy.
mate.
You're a top
Yeah.
guy, and your
Thank you,
dad
Joe.
was an absolute legend.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. I really do. Guys, take care and we'll see you next time.